Iran held elections this week, and we're told that moderates made significant gains in the parliamentary seats. What does that actually mean for Iran's relationship with the West and with Israel? Welcome to SkyWatch TV, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us in studio, well, via Skype anyway, is a PhD in Islamic history, served as an Arabic translator for the 101st Airborne, and the author of two new and very helpful books, 10 Years Captivation with the Mahdi's Camps and Sects, Lies, and the Caliphate, Dr. Timothy Furnish. Tim, welcome.
Hi, Derek.
You've actually been to Iran. So you've gotten, at least as far as that goes, if nothing else, more of an insight as to what's going on over there than the rest of us. But having studied Shia Islam and Shia eschatology, that gives you a little more insight perhaps on their political motivations, if nothing else, at least their religious motivations. Starting with the definition of the word moderate. Moderate is in the eye of the beholder. What do these changes in the parliamentary makeup actually mean politically inside Iran?
Well, not a great deal. It's much ado about, I won't say nothing, but actually quite little. And I'm glad you brought that up because defining terms is something that's never done in this regard. I was just reading an article this morning about the elections in Iran, crowing by a Western journalist, crowing about the moderates had won. And then he went on to talk about how the moderates were going to ally with the moderate conservatives. And I wondered about the liberal conservatives and then the conservative conservatives. So, these journalists never understand this. I remember this. This is how old I am, Derek. I remember this was an issue back when the Soviet Union fell apart and Boris Yeltsin came to power. And the media were falling all over themselves trying to figure out, do we call Yeltsin a liberal or a conservative or a progressive or a regressive or, what exactly is he? And the same sort of thing applies here, except in spades, because as you just pointed out, sort of obliquely, but quite accurately, we've got an issue not just of politics here, but of 12er Shia Islam, because it is the Islamic Republic. So what I would say is that I think the whole idea of reformists is vastly overstated. If you look at the Islamic Republic of Iran and the institution that's in place, it's been in there since 1979. It's the closest thing to a theocracy on the face of the earth, right? It is in some ways a legitimate democracy, and this is where I would part ways with some of my colleagues, I should say, who turn into critics on this issue. I think Iran is in many ways a very viable democracy. However, at the top of the democracy is the theological component of 12er Shi'ism, the Guardian Council, the Expediency Council, and of course the Supreme Leader. And so the Supreme Leader can overrule or veto or overturn anything that the parliament, the freely elected parliament, which has women in it too, by the way, many women, anything that does. The president, for instance, in Iran, many people don't know this, the president does not control the armed forces. The armed forces are controlled by the Supreme Leader, who of course is Khamenei. There have only been two Supreme Leaders of Iran, Khamenei and for him Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, the starter of the revolution. So, a lot of this is, I guess, sort of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic because whether the reformists or the conservatives or the conservative moderates or moderate conservatives are, control a functioning majority in the 290-seat Majlis or Parliament doesn't really matter, because in the final analysis, what matters is that the clerics run the country.
Yeah, and I was guilty of that 10 years ago when I was hosting a daily secular talk show in mid-Missouri. I was fond of referring to the then president of Iran as Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, as though he actually was the one who would direct where the Iranian military would launch its strikes. You make some really interesting points in your books about the influence of 12er Shi'ism on what Iran's ultimate aims toward Israel might be. And I was interested to learn that in Muslim eschatology in general, and perhaps among Shias in particular, there is more emphasis placed on Syria and on Israel than we in the West really understand. How might that affect Iran's dealings regarding Israel?
Well, yeah, what you've gotten at is something that affects both Sunni and Shia Islam, of course, not just Shia eschatology. Again, A lot of people, I think this is starting to change, but a lot of people heretofore have tended to think that the 12 are Shia, with their very open, very overt belief in the return of the 12th Imam as the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah figure, that they're sort of the eschatologists in Islam, and the rest of the people aren't. And that's simply not the case. There's a very strong component of this belief in Sunni Islam, and ISIS exemplifies this. I think that how this would affect what goes on with Israel would be that for the Shia, the 12 are Shia, just like the Sunnis, the main apocalyptic or eschatological venue is basically Syria and that region, what we would call a Levant, or what the French would call a Levant, I guess. And Mecca and Medina are sort of secondary. I mean, there are hadiths, sayings of alleged sayings of Muhammad that say that the Mahdi, the Sunni Mahdi in particular, will come from the area of Mecca and Medina, but the 12 Shia don't necessarily buy into that. And of course, as we've talked about before, and I think you know, a lot of other people probably know this by now too, that ISIS is very eschatological. The fact they call their magazine Dabiq is named after that town in northern Syria, where they think the sort of Armageddon-like battle where they will defeat the Christian forces will occur. So a lot of those same beliefs are in 12 Shia Islam. Of course, the 12 Shia and the Sunnis think that each one has the proper understanding of eschatology, and that the other ones will be proved wrong eventually by the Mahdi and by Jesus when he comes back. But I think you also have to keep in mind here, Derek, is that there's a very strong component in Iran, besides 12 Shiism, of nationalism. And it's as strong, I think, in many ways as the 12 Shia beliefs. Iran, unlike the Arabs, Iran or Persia had a kingdom, an empire going back, to 500 BC or so. Not just talked about in the Bible. Of course, the Greeks fought them, as we know from the not quite accurate movie 300. But that all went on, and there were several major incarnations of Persian nation states or empires. The Parthians, the Sasanians, before we get to the Islamic empires. And so what you'll see, some of these ayatollahs will even put up things, and I talk about this in my book, will put up maps and talk about Greater Iran. And Greater Iran, basically, if you look at it, is sort of the Sasanian Empire from about the year 610 AD, before the Islamic conquest. And that included what is now the Levant. And in fact, at one point, they even conquered into Egypt. This was back when they were fighting the Romans and the Byzantines. So that's the other component that you have to look at too. It's not just the eschatology in terms of the religion. It's sort of the idea of bringing back Persian nationalism. Now, do the Iranians really think that they're going to conquer all those Arab countries? I don't really think so. I think a more realistic goal for them, which is to some extent being realized, is that they would become the standard bearer of the Shia. We see that that's happening with Iraq. I mean, Iraq basically, I think the territorial integrity of Iraq is never coming back. I think it's reverting to what it was under the Ottomans. And under the Ottomans, one of the major parts down around Basra and the southern part, for much of the time that was fought over between the Ottoman Empire and the Persian 12 Shia Empire to the east, belonged to the latter. And then the other thing, of course, is Yemen, which is a far afield from Syria. But Yemen is 40% Fiver Shia or Zaidi, which is not exactly the same as the Iranians and the Iraqis, but it's close enough that the Iranians are willing to support them, with military hardware and other such support against the Saudis. So you have to look at both. I think both in terms of eschatology, both Sunni and Shia. The area of Syria is very, very important, and the area of the Levant, which would include Israel, and of course it's very supremely important because it includes Quds, or Jerusalem, which for Muslims is considered to be the third holiest city, and then because in terms of Iranian, as I said, nationalism or irredentism, if you will, that whole region was once part of their various empires.
I made the mistake once in college of telling a foreign student from Iran that I thought that Persians and Arabs were the same thing, and he took great offense to that. I only made that mistake one time.
It's like calling an Irishman an Englishman.
Right, yes, very much so. But because of their expectation that their eschatology will be fulfilled at Jerusalem, again, the claim that conservative talk show hosts in America have that Iran wants a nuke, Benjamin Netanyahu made the same claim, that Iran wants a nuke so they can destroy Israel, would seem to be counterproductive if they want Jerusalem to be there for the Mahdi to return.
Yeah, and as Derek, I don't believe this, and this is one place where I part ways, and I talk about this at length, especially in 10 years captivation with the Mahdi's camp, based on having been to Iran, but more importantly on having studied Iran and having studied Twelver Shiism for many years. I just simply don't believe this is the case. Does Iran want a nuke, or nukes plural? No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And short of invading the country with a massive force, we're not going to stop them. Do they want them to use on Israel in order to hotwire the apocalypse? No. There's no indication in Twelver Shia thought or in Iranian political thought that this is the case. They want them for regime insurance like the North Koreans have, and also to increase their clout, but they're not going to use them. And at least the last place they would use them besides their own country would be on Jerusalem, because, yeah, as you point out, as I say in the book, the Mahdi, the 12th Imam, is not going to return, and he will not want to return and find a radioactive ruin where, an area that he likes, like Jerusalem. So the Iranians would not use them on Israel. They will keep them in their back pocket and use them for that sort of clout.
Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, Iran's certainly no friend to Israel, as we announced, or we learned this week that they are planning to pay the families of Palestinian terrorists for their attacks against Israelis. So we're not confusing their intentions against, yeah.
There's been enmity toward Israel going back to Khomeini. Well, even before that, under the Shah, and it has a lot to do with the Baha'is, the Baha'i religion, which the headquarters of is in northern Israel, in Akko or Acre. This was a weird offshoot of Twelver Shia Islam, started in the 19th century, where there was a chap that claimed to be the Mahdi. The 12th Imam returned. Needless to say, it didn't go over very well in Iran. And for political reasons, this guy and his followers were kicked off into the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans took them. It was sort of like, I guess, the Germans taking Lenin or something. They're planning on doing something with him later. But the Ottomans allowed the Baha'is, which, is a very peaceful group now, very, very sort of universalist and syncretistic religion, to set up their world headquarters in northern Israel. And even under the Shah, and this particularly became very virulent belief under Khomeini in the Islamic Republic, the belief in Iran, shared by many, not just in the intelligentsia, but many in the culture, is that the Baha'is, being located in northern Israel, work with the perfidious Jews, if you will, that's sort of the belief, to undermine Iran.
Right.
So, and then, of course, Iran exploits this whole Palestinian idea, even though the Palestinians are mostly Sunni. The ones that aren't Sunni are Christian. But Iran exploits this, and I'm convinced, mainly because it's a convenient club with which to beat the Arabs. Because the Arab regimes, the Egyptians and the Syrians and others, Jordanians, can be portrayed by the Iranians as not doing much to stand up for their Palestinian brothers. So the Iranians can step in and exploit that.
It probably plays well at home, too. One final question. There was a Jewish journalist who this week wrote an op-ed piece, and frankly, I don't know how widely read she is, but she offered the opinion that the Sunnis and Shias, ISIS and Iran, are ready to ally with one another against Israel, and that Israel had better be prepared for World War III, a perfect storm of Islamic enemies coming together. What are the chances that ISIS and Iran somehow find common cause and go after Israel?
About as high as the chance that I'll go outside, dunk on my kid's basketball goal 10 feet. No. Look, sometimes people way overcomplicate things. I'll just apply Occam's razor here. The Iranians can't stand ISIS because, why? Because a lot of reasons, but the most prominent reason is because ISIS kills more Shia than they do anyone else. They've killed many Shia in Syria and Iraq. They make no bones about it in Dabik and in their videos. There is no geopolitical reason for Iran, and there's certainly no theological reason for Iran to support ISIS. So that's just that's a vast conspiracy theory that someone's advancing for other reasons, but it has no basis in reality.
Dr. Timothy Furnish, the author of 10 Years Captivation with the Mahdi's Camps and Sects, Lies, and the Caliphate. His website is MahdiWatch.org. Tim, thanks very much for your time and your expertise.
You're welcome, Derek.
This is Wednesday. That means the matinee edition of SkyWatch TV. You'll see SkyWatch TV's weekly program featuring Timothy Alberino, the director and expedition leader for the True Legends documentary series. Today, 3:30 p.m. Central Time on the Cornerstone Network, broadcasting coast to coast. We talk about the evidence for giants and the evidence of the cover-up of that evidence. Again, 3:30 p.m. today, Central Time on the Cornerstone Network. And then twice on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. on the Victory Television Network for you viewers in Arkansas and around Memphis. And then nationwide on the Christian Television Network, Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Again, that's Central Time. And for complete channel listings, to find the station closest to you carrying SkyWatch TV, log on to SkyWatchTV.com and click the link in the top menu bar that says Channel Listing. We've entered a period of human history in which a small but influential and well-funded group believes that we will find heaven on a silicon chip. The merger of biology and technology, the future of humanity, according to some in the transhumanist movement. That's why we at SkyWatch TV, along with Defender Films, produced the movie Inhuman, The Next and Final Phase of Man is Here. It's been nominated for a Telly Award. The 37th annual Telly's ongoing now. And the voting for the People's Choice category continues. And we're asking your help. At the very top of the page at skywatchtv.com is a link. You'll find this. You'll see the ad there, and click that link. That'll take you to the website for the Telly Awards. If you just take a few moments, rate the film Inhuman. Help us spread the word about this 21st century science fiction religion. Let's face it, our kids, our grandkids are coming out of the cradle with mobile devices that are internet connected. They see the miracles of technology every day. How often do they hear the gospel? It's a deception, a great deception perhaps. We're spreading the word, and we appreciate your help in doing so. My email for your comments, questions, and suggestions, always open, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. And thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.
From the time she was little, Nita dreamed of horses. Every childhood fantasy rode on the back of a heroic white steed, coming to save the day.
I don't know how long I've had this love in my heart for horses. It's just always been there. And when we were little girls, my sister and I would play all day long. I was always the white horse, and she was always the little pink pig.
Let's pretend Lightning and Rosie can fly.
But everything changed in a heartbeat. On December 9th, 1971, a tragic car accident claimed the life of my dad and my best friend and my little sister. And I wondered after that if there was anything left to believe in.
Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
As a child of 13, I felt like I had lost practically everything. And I wondered, is this it? I mean, where do I go from here? I could not have imagined back then how God could use horses, of all things, to restore my faith and vision for the future.
Starting April 19th, get your copy of Nita Horn's inspirational new book, No Fences, and learn for the first time her amazing story of loss, survival, determination, and healing. How the vision and love God gave her for these beautiful and majestic animals eventually led to the 150-acre Whispering Ponies Ranch, a general retreat facility, as well as a premier training location that specializes in using and gifting therapeutic animals to benefit the herding. Other care facilities, schools, and ministries across the nation.
When God puts something in your heart, it's there for a lifetime.